welcome to the latest episode of Waypoint, the AirMed&Rescue podcast. Joining me this time is Anne Rodenburg of USMX AirLink Air Ambulance, which provides, as is suggested by their name, international air medical flights from its base in Mexico. Anne, welcome to Waypoint. So, Anne, how long have you worked in the air ambulance sector for, and how did you first get started?
So I've been working in the air ambulance sector since 2009, which is 16 years now. And I got first started as the international relations manager for AirLink. I managed the international corporate client accounts, and I really loved it. I was in Mexico. I moved from the Netherlands before getting this job for my master's, and I stayed for the job. I absolutely loved everything about it. I was completely new to the industry, and I got to know many people. I traveled the world. I went on several flights myself, so I really got to know the entire process of an air ambulance flight, and I really liked it. And then afterwards, I became the commercial director of the entire group, of the USMX AirLink group, which also includes other aviation products. And I currently work part-time as AirLink's commercial advisor, as we call it, which means that I help with the strategic direction, and I mentor my colleagues that are responsible for client contacts and marketing. And this position allows me to work remotely from the Netherlands, where I moved back to the Netherlands with my family, and dividing my time between my family and work.
So Netherlands to Mexico and back again. That's quite an adventure. Culturally, they're two very different places. Did you love your time in Mexico though?
I did. I loved everything about it. Yes, it was almost 14 years that I lived in Mexico, and I loved it. I still miss it. Mexico has treated me exceptionally well. I have had a very good time in Mexico. Yes.
Nice weather as well. Whereabouts in Mexico were you actually living?
So the first 10 years I lived in Guadalajara, and then the last 3.5 years, almost 4 years, I lived in Tijuana.
Oh, right. Okay. Party location.
It is, although, it is. I didn't do a lot of partying myself, to be honest with you, but yeah, it is. A lot of people come there to party. That's right.
Nice. So you mentioned there a bit about USMX AirLink having other divisions and that sort of thing as well, but focusing on the air ambulance sector, what kind of assets does the company have? What's its scope of operations, that sort of thing?
So USMX AirLink is an aviation company, basically. It does more than just ambulance. And it's a medium-sized company with 71 employees and around 15 on-call experts. And apart from air ambulance, which really is the largest and most important division, AirLink also offers the executive charters, the cargo flights, MRO services, which is the maintenance, repair, and overhaul. And we administer aircraft also for third parties. And we manage an aviation school. So there are really several things in terms of aviation that we do. We own 2 aircraft and we exclusively lease 2 others. And we administer 9 aircraft. So that's basically, in terms of aircraft, what we have. And in air ambulance, we operate 3 planes. So it's 2 Learjet 35s and 1 Citation 3. And we fly in the entire continent of the Americas. We do a lot of work transporting patients from Mexico and entire Latin America, mostly to the US and Canada. We sometimes do as well flights back to Europe or to Asia together with our URAMI accredited partners. AirLink is URAMI accredited, as I mentioned, since 2011. We also are accredited provider for the International Assistance Group, the only one in Mexico for many years. And 2 years ago, we also got accredited by T-Compliance. Many people do not know that company. It's a comprehensive due diligence process that is administered by a U.S. third-party risk management organization.
Okay.
And we did that. It was a voluntary process. We did that because, for many years, AirLink has been advocating against the doubtful practices in our zone, the corrupt practices from some of the industry players in our region. And we had a lot of thoughts and conversations like, what can we do to really make a change and to really separate ourselves from what is going on there. I think as well during the conferences and in industry events, this has been a topic. So we have been thinking like, how can we kind of make a move? What can we do to make this better? And one of the things that we have been doing is, starting with ourselves, like, okay, let's really start a move and let's do something where we can demonstrate to our clients, to our patients, a complete commercial transparency. And so that's what we did. We contracted this company that did this entire due diligence on us in terms of background of all the employees, of the owners, of financial streams. They investigated everything, and that is something that that's something that we then can show, and hopefully this is something that we communicate to partners and to the industry and to other big players in Mexico, and hopefully other people will follow. So really together we can create a safer and more transparent provider network in Mexico. That's basically the idea. Trying to start this movement. Yeah.
That's wonderful. That's brave. Like, I think a lot of companies would hesitate at the depth of that audit, like every single employee, all the directors, every financial transaction, everything. You can kind of be confident that you're doing a good job and you're doing well and you're being transparent, but that level of scrutiny it's sometimes quite hard to deal with, and sometimes people discover things that they didn't know about their colleagues or their peers or that kind of thing as well. So
that might be for us. It was more like, okay, well, if we discover that, and it's better that we know it, right? Because we really want to have that transparency.
True.
So that was kind of the idea behind it, and we knew we had to do something. You can always accuse other people, or you can basically decide two things, right? When you're doing this, you can focus on other people and like, oh, they should be better, and how can we make them better, and everything about them, or you can focus on yourself and really try to start the movement yourself. And that's the thing that we've decided to do. What others do we cannot control, so we really try to focus on ourselves, do this ourselves, and hopefully that starts a movement. Of course, we're trying to promote that and see if we can make some kind of shift there, hopefully.
I think that's great. I think that's such a good ethos to have as a provider. I mean, in the aviation industry and in the medical industry, obviously, these are the two things that you do. Transparency of decision-making processes and protocols as well. It's so important to the payers, to the patient outcomes and everything. But people are paying tens of thousands, if not more, of dollars for these flights, and being able to prove that every decision that you make is grounded in fact and evidence.
Yes,
is so right. And that's what you can control. You can't control what everyone else is doing. Exactly. It's only about you.
Exactly. And it was one of the questions further on as well, which is interesting, is really about quality standards and the quality of care and patient safety. And then, of course, there are wonderful accreditations out there, but I do feel that it's very hard to, if you are doing a good job and you have the resources to prepare for such an accreditation, basically everyone can get it at the end of the day. If you comply, you just go over the standards, you comply with every standard, you do a good job in that. However, it's more difficult to measure ethics and if the company is doing, from an ethical point of view, a good job.
So true.
But that part of being ethical is really important if you're talking about patient safety and quality of care, not only for the patient, but also for, a lot of our clients, which, in our case, generally are insurance and assistance companies, that we make ethical decisions, that we don't overprice, that we, make decisions always the well-being of the patient, first before financial outcomes, for example. Right.
Absolutely.
So and that is hard to measure if you get to, the standards from the majority of the accreditation bodies. And they do have, parts where that comes up. But this due diligence program that we did was only focused on that. And I think that is something, I would encourage other people to do it, because I do feel that is very important in terms of quality of care, because that's what you do, because you're treating with patients, because you're in a lot of decisions on a daily basis. Ethics is a very important component and is where you take the decision, even if it's legal. Ethics is always there, and it's important that you have that good compass, right, of ethical behavior and taking good ethical decisions.
Absolutely, always for the best of the patient.
Yes, yeah, absolutely.
So in terms of the people that are making these decisions in your staff, the medical crew, I was wondering what sort of ratio. You mentioned you've got 71 employees, I think you said.
That's right, yes.
So you've got multiple different facets of the company, but in terms of the number of flight crew to the number of medical crew, and presumably you have like a pool of medical crew that you can call on as well. I was wondering sort of how many people you employ in each department and how they work together.
Yeah. Well, we have them on the payroll. So
Okay.
it's not really a pool that we call. We have them on a payroll. And I think what's interesting to mention as well, that in Mexico, it's common to always have a physician on board. So what we do is we do not work with nurses, but we work with physicians and paramedics with respiratory training. So that's our standard team, basically, a doctor and a paramedic with respiratory training. And then depending on the condition of the patient, a specialist or a doctor or paramedic, they can be added so we can create a full team. So to answer your question, we have one set of medical crew per aircraft. So we employ full-time 3 flight physicians and 3 flight paramedics. And we also employ a medical director, of course, which can also fly when necessary. And then we have specialists, they're on call. But we do have the medical crew on the payroll. I think that's one of the advantages of our geographic location as well, that in terms of hiring, we do not have the problem that in many countries they find to have problem to have medical crew that wants to fly. I think in Mexico, the opposite is true. We have a lot of good qualified medical crew that is willing to fly. So that's wonderful to have. And I also think that in terms of the lower salaries that are in Mexico, it gives us an international advantage in that sense, is that we have that advantage because we don't have the shortages basically that other countries encounter, or the really higher prices that they would need to pay, because we have such a big pool we can choose from really specialized people. And the salaries, if you compare with international salaries, are a little bit lower, which means, with the prices of an air ambulance, we're allowed to provide a better salary, which gives us an advantage over, for example, let's say a hospital. So that's why we have them on the payroll. And I think one of the biggest advantages of that is that our medical crew is really attuned with our flight crew. And so they really work together as a team, and they work together on every flight, and they also train together. So as we have our own aviation school, of course, our medical crew, they take the aviation courses that is necessary. But apart from that, they also take the aviation courses that perhaps are not completely required by the aviation authority or by but they do work together. So they do take the trainings, which means that there's really this really great and cool teamwork, which works out very well.
Crew resource management is such a vital part of a small crew going sometimes to quite remote places to pick patients up and drop them off, and having that team of people that you can rely on. As you say, that sometimes the flight crew needs some training in sort of lifting patients and that kind of thing to get them on the plane properly. And then if your medical crew are also having a little extra lesson here or there on the aviation side, it increases that ability to mix those skills and really blend the team together seamlessly.
Yes, it does. No, it does. It's a big advantage. We're very, very fortunate to be able to do this way.
Yeah, having the flight school is a little bonus.
It does. Having the flight school is a bonus too. Yes.
So
absolutely.
It must help with recruitment, because I speak to a lot of people in this industry, and recruitment of pilots is something that a lot of people are having problems with. So I guess if you're kind of training up your own flight crew, that's going to help you in the long run as well.
It does help, but I do think that it's fair to say that the situation in relation to pilots is more or less the same for many countries, also for Mexico. There's basically more demand than supply. Yes.
Yeah.
In AirLink, we have been lucky that we have a very well connected and experienced chief pilot for the last 25 years that has been working for us.
Oh wow, and that's very good retention.
Yes, and he has helped up to set up and run our own aviation school. So what he has been doing as well is selecting and training pilots, partly, not everything, but partly ourselves. And I think choosing the right personalities and characters is vital, is crucial for creating that loyalty and retaining staff, because it's very different, of course, to be an air ambulance pilot or to be just a commercial pilot. And there are people that that are, even if they can earn more money perhaps in flying an aircraft commercially, they say, no, I'm really an air ambulance pilot. This is so much more fun. You really fly the aircraft, and everything that is making it an air ambulance. That is excited for me. So our chief pilot has been very good in picking out those people and training them themselves, and caring for them and treating them well. So we don't have a huge problem there. However, we do know that if we add another aircraft and we haven't trained them ourselves, or we haven't necessarily planned for it, or aircraft that we administer, and people ask us like, oh, we need extra pilots, could you help us with that too? We have the same problem. It's the same problem for us. Yes, there's a shortage, basically. Yeah.
So us as mothers, we should be training our children up to be pilots of the future, right?
Yes, exactly. It's an interesting career. Yes.
Challenging, definitely, but amazing. And as you say, being an air ambulance pilot is it's rewarding in a different way. You can really make a difference, I think.
You can really make a difference. There are a lot of pros and cons. You can make the difference. You really fly the aircraft, and it is exciting sometimes. I think for most people, if you don't have basically that character, you never know when you're going to fly, and that for many people, of course, is difficult. Yes. Especially people with other responsibilities such as families, etc. You never know when you're going to fly. You never know for how long you will be away, and that's complicated. You never know where you're going to fly, so you really have to be a very good pilot as well, because there's not a lot of there's not just the same route every time, and the handling will be completely prepared for you. No, you have to do a lot of things you have to do yourself, and sometimes, exactly as you said, you get to remote places where, as a pilot, they expect a lot from you, because there's not much, at some airports, especially in the zone where we operate. So that has to really match with what you like to do and how you would like to fly a plane.
Yeah, there'll be pilots listening to this that might go, oh, that actually sounds amazing. That sounds really fun. The people that are doing the HEMS flights where they're on 12, 14-hour shifts where they literally have no idea where they're going at any minute. At least in fixed wing air ambulance, you've got a few hours warning, you've got to quote, and then you've got to prep the flight and that kind of thing. So it's not like the dispatch comes in and within 5 minutes your helicopter's off the ground. So
that's right. No, that's a completely different thing. Yes, no, absolutely. If you compare it with rotary wing, it's way more planned, right? Yes.
Yeah. Oh, it's positively relaxing.
Exactly. Yes. No, definitely.
So we've covered recruitment. We touched on training as well with your flight school. In terms of other challenges that the aviation sector is facing, I mean, MRO, you mentioned you've got your own MRO facility as well, but a lot of people are reporting real difficulties in managing downtime with their fleet because they cannot get the part.
That's right.
So how are you as a company managing that?
That is a challenge also for us, and it has become more complicated to buy parts. We have one person that is only dedicated to that, so they're looking for parts all the time, and they work very closely with our maintenance, so they know more or less what's coming up. And sometimes they just buy parts in advance, even if we don't need it at that time.
Right. If you see it, buy it there and then, because you're going to need it. Yeah,
that's right. But it is challenging for everyone. There's no, magical solution for it. It is challenging, and especially because in air ambulance, we also, we use Learjet 35s that are not the newest aircraft. So you do need parts, and they don't make the aircraft anymore. So that's more complicated. So that's one of the challenges. Yes, absolutely. There's no way around it. And also the lead times are increasing as well. So even if you have the part and getting everything to your hangar, etc., it's difficult. It is.
And if you look at the kind of the state of the world we're living in, the geopolitical events that are happening, everything is moving fast, and it doesn't feel like supply chains are easing. I feel like, if anything, it's almost more difficult now. You don't know kind of how economies are going to react, what financial situations countries are going to be in, how their ability to trade is going to be affected as well. So preparing for that as a company working in the international air ambulance arena, are you constantly looking at international events going, right, what's the knock-on effects of this decision or this impact?
We do, but not in a very, we tend to keep it positive in the sense that we do look at the events, especially, for example, the fuel prices, of course, is also something that is affected directly by what's going on in the world.
Absolutely, yeah.
And we do look at it, we plan for it, but also, we also take it step by step, because otherwise it gets too complicated, right? So we keep everything in mind. Yes, that's true. And also, for example, not only with parts, but also in terms of planning. Geopolitical things makes that, for example, they expect that more Canadians will come down to Mexico instead of going to the south parts of the United States in upcoming high season, upcoming cold season, let's say. So we plan for that. We say, okay, a lot of Canadians have been telling us that that's what they expect. Well, then we really have to make sure that we are able to offer availability of our aircraft. So how are we going to do that? So we do keep that in mind, and we plan for it. Yes, but we do try to keep it positive, because there are so many things that are happening in the world, and so many negative stories. We do try to really keep it with the facts and keep it on the positive side, and just keep walking.
Just keep on swimming, as they say.
Exactly. Keep on flying. Yeah.
I was wondering, you mentioned earlier that a lot of your clients are assistance companies and insurance companies. You must work with private pay patients as well,
Yes.
tourists or expats who aren't insured or aren't insured as they thought they were, so they need to pay for these flights themselves. I was wondering what you see in terms of, are there any differences between the two types of businesses that you're kind of operating here? So the private pay patients don't have any choice. They've got to pay what they are quoted. Insurance companies, their bottom lines are under a lot of pressure. I am hearing reports from operators in other parts of the world that insurers need air ambulances more because they don't want to leave patients in situ. So they are requesting more air ambulance transfers, but they're squeezing on price. So are you seeing that at all? And how are those negotiations working?
We do see that a little bit, because we speak to our clients, and we do feel that there's more pressure in terms of price. However, there's only so much you can do. So what you can do is you can play more with routing, trying to connect kind of the flights that you do so that you can lower the price a little bit. But there's not much we can do in lowering more our price, because it's set up on several components that need to be paid. And so price, a lot of the times, if we cannot connect dots with our flight, then that's there's nothing we can, it's not like, oh yes, I can, I would like to give you a discount, so I can give you a discount. It's basically, or at least with us, that's not how it's set up. So that's also not something that we do. It's a price quoted, it's a fair price, and that's basically is the price for the service.
That comes back down to the transparency that you were talking about in the beginning.
Yes.
This is the base level of cost. This is how much it costs to get the plane into the air with the right crew, with the right level of care for that patient.
Exactly. And then there's a certain part that we earn something of it, of course.
Well, you're not running a charity.
Sure, but that's really what it is. That's really what it is. And there's no bigger inflated, things that we can say, oh yeah, we can discount a few $1,000s. It's just not how it works, or at least that's not how it works with us. So the price is kind of the price. That is, first of all. But I think we're very, I think we have fair prices. I think we're, in terms of the industry and in terms of, our competition with other companies do, I think we're very fairly priced in a very normal way. So that, first of all, I think that the main difference, though, in terms of, the two different segments, the international travel insurance and private pay, basically has to do with the level of awareness and expectations, not so much with, in terms of pricing. I feel that, at least for us, insurance companies generally are much more familiar with the industry, with standards, with how the flights will go, and they can explain that to their members.
Yes.
While, with self-pay, you really have to take them by the hand, and they don't know, they don't know. We picked them up with an aircraft, how does that look like? Can I take 7 suitcases and 2 big dogs? They don't know how small it is, how what will happen. So that is an entirely different process in terms of communication and in terms of, taking someone by the hand. Generally, when it's a self-pay, we help people as well with admission if necessary. We help people if they have too many suitcases. We help them with shipping them home afterwards. There's a lot of emotions involved a lot of times. So you also do a lot of work of talking with people, of managing anxiety, of those kind of things. So it's a completely different thing than being almost kind of a medical taxi service to the insurance company, where you bring a patient from A to B, and the communication from our call center with their call center. Then of course our doctors do that with do the empathic approach with the patient, but not in terms of the contracting. So I think that's a big difference, more than, or at least for us, more than the price. I don't see a big difference there ourselves. No.
As you say, when it's the private pay patients and they're in a horrible situation, and you're there holding their hand, literally and metaphorically, through the whole process. Yeah,
exactly. But there's also for them, even if we would love to do it, there's not much we can do in terms of price. We can ask them, if that's the route, we're not very competitive, you might want to ask another provider that might be more competitive, or you can try to wait for an empty leg. We can educate them. We can say, well, we might have another flight, or that you might wait for that if the condition of the patient allows that. But in terms of discount or giving a different price, that's complicated. It's difficult.
Yeah. It can be very stressful and very emotional, I think, for these patients, but also very rewarding when you get the right outcomes and you get that, thank you from the family and that kind of thing. Have you had a particular career highlight, sort of in terms of what you enjoy most, and then if there was a particular moment that's really stood out to you about what you're doing?
A lot. I think there have been a lot of cases that I remember really well. And then of course, we receive a lot of letters, even people that would like to give us a gift. There was one gentleman once, he was an artist. He would make paintings. And he said he was so grateful. He painted 2 big paintings for our medical crew. And it was a gentleman from the United States. And he said, well, I would like to ship it to Mexico because I would like to thank your team and your medics. So those kind of things are really something that you don't forget. And then they had this beautifully made 2 paintings shipped to Mexico. It was so wonderful. But I think, for me, the highlights is when I used to live in Mexico, I would go on flights myself once in a while. It was important for me to kind of keep in touch with operations, with my colleagues from operations, but also to be able to feel and experience myself, so that I could talk to our clients and to not really our patients, because that normally our call center does that, but to our clients. And so I would generally choose flights, or we would choose flights that I could add some value. So either patients that are from the Netherlands, so they could help with the language, that would speak Dutch, or patients. I've been on several flights of a foundation, a Mexican foundation for burn children, and those children would generally come from families had never went out of their village before. They had never seen an airplane before. Some people couldn't speak. They spoke their local language, so they didn't speak as well Spanish. Some couldn't read and write, and the doctors were then very focused, of course, on everything that had to do with the medical part, on the child. But then there was always generally the mother, the father, the caregiver would be there. And they also needed attention because they had no idea what was going on, what was written down, or so it was. I would sometimes go and help with that part. And those are the highlights that I will never forget. Those were very, very special and very impressive events. And I do not have a medical background, so always flights that we would absolutely make sure that I would not disturb in any way. I could add something, and those were very, very special flights. Yes, that is something that I would never forget.
That's wonderful. I mean, that's when you kind of really feel like your day-to-day job is making a real difference in people's lives, because as you say, it's in a way it's kind of quite easy to. The air medical side is that business, and the flight crew and the medics are doing that, and you're on the commercial development side. But it's so important that you're still connected to why you're doing what you're doing.
Exactly. Yes, I do feel that. I feel that makes the difference, and I also feel that in certain initiatives in terms of quality, apart from the quality program that we have and the accreditations and T compliance that we have, certain initiatives that we're taking is because of that, because there's a connection between the operations really and the marketing department. So we know more or less what's going on, and we have such good contact with each other that we're making decisions like that. For example, last year we developed a children's book, because a lot of the times when we transport children, it's hard for them to understand, when they're conscious and you're picking them up, it's hard for them to understand what's going to happen to them, even if you tell them and you prepare them, and it's hard for them to visualize, even for adults. Speaking about children, even for adults, and but also children that were unconscious that we would transport, when they would wake up, and to know what happened to them, So what we decided is to write a children's book with a story of a girl that was transported by air ambulance. And the intention of that book was really is really to kind of true storytelling, kind of empower those children of knowing what was going to happen, or knowing what had happened to them, and be able to visualize that, and to channel their emotions, and to know more or less what was going on.
What a brilliant idea. I had no idea that existed. That's so important.
So we made this picture book about a little story. I can bring you a copy if you like to the next event. And it was not the first time it was done. It was done before already by another great air ambulance company in the past, years ago. But we did it as well, and it has been working out very well. Even in the hospital people, they really like that, because also the doctors and the nurses, they can afterwards read the book again with the child, and they have questions, and they go through the book again. So it has worked out very well.
Right. Well, I think we've just about run out of time, but thank you so much for taking the time to chat with us today. It's been really brilliant talking to you.
Absolutely. No, it has been wonderful. Thank you so much for the opportunity, and for letting me sharing this.
Pleasure. Okay. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Well, thank you so much to Anne Rodenburg for joining us on Waypoint, the AirMed&Rescue podcast, and thank you to all of our listeners. Don't forget to subscribe to the podcast to make sure you're up to date with all the latest episodes. Listen on your favourite streaming service now. See you next time.